Hewlin from KendoWorld. I'm here with Dr. Blake Bennett, who is a Ph.D. from the University of Canterbury. He's a lecturer in the Bachelor of Sports, Health and Physical Education degree in the School of Curriculum and Pedagogy at the University of Auckland. So Blake completed his doctoral degree in 2016 in the field of sport coaching, with a focus on the pedagogies used by rugby coaches in New Zealand and Japanese secondary schools. Right now, his research is focused on two lines of inquiry around the pedagogies, the online pedagogies in high-performance sports coaching contexts, and on the influences of child safeguarding policies on volunteer coaches. So Blake has also been coaching in the volunteer space for 20 years. He's the current coach of the men's New Zealand Kendo team. And most importantly, for our purposes, he's a longtime Kendo practitioner and KendoWorld contributor. So thank you for taking the time out to chat with us.
It's my pleasure, Elan. Thanks for having me, mate.
So you recently wrote an article for Sports New Zealand talking a little bit about sort of online coaching. Do you want to talk about that a little bit? Describe the article?
Yeah, sure thing, man. Like, as you said, Elan, like my primary role at the moment when I'm coaching is that of the New Zealand men's kendo team. And you know, moving into the pandemic era, where we were so limited in what we could do on the floor, it became really important for us to emphasize what we were doing in the online space.
You were already starting that even before coronavirus, right?
That's right, yeah. So it was, for us, it was a pre-pandemic sort of decision, right? We've got, and it's probably pretty similar for a number of sports, let alone kendo teams, that when you're at that representative level, we've got people dotted all over the country and even all over the world. We've got people in Australia and in Japan and in the UK and so on. So the question for us was, how do we connect our athletes, our team members, across those borders, geographical, time, all that sort of stuff. And so we went straight for the online coaching platform that we found called Coach Now. But there's a number of different ways to skin that cat. We decided to go for this particular platform, and what it was essentially a way for us to structure the group into nice manageable numbers, 2 to 3, and we made sure that we had a little bit of leadership tied into there as well. Some people who had been previously represented the New Zealand at the World Champs, so that there was a little bit of alignment in values, I guess, and what we wanted to champion there. So yeah, we were underway pretty early in the piece with that online approach, and it just so happened to be a really helpful transition when we went into lockdown. I don't know if your viewers are aware, but New Zealand went into a pretty strict lockdown. Where have you gone, mate?
Yep. So what makes an online coaching platform different from say like an online school platform like Blackboard or Canvas, or just regular social media? I mean, is it?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, my job as a lecturer, we have a similar setup. We've got Canvas, right, which is not too dissimilar from Moodle or Learn or any number of other approaches. The decision to go with Coach Now, because it's a paid app, right? So that sort of potentially excludes some people from using it because it costs a bit of coin, and we're all amateurs here. But the decision was primarily based around the specificity of the app. It was for connecting coaches with their athletes. And if we were to use Facebook or something like that, free to use sort of social media, absolutely nothing wrong with that. And I think it would achieve, with the tools that you have, the same sort of purposes. But because it was a specific app built for the purpose that we had in mind, it really sort of added to the sense of professionalism that we were trying to get across as management. But also I found that it tends to limit or potentially limit the other distractions that you have. If you've come onto the app to engage and talk about your kendo or deconstruct something that you've seen on YouTube, there's all this other column of notifications and messages that it takes the attention away. We're talking about a group of athletes who are amateur in as much as they don't get paid for this, but the expectation is that they're high performance, right? So we want them to be focused when they're there to talk about kendo, when they're there to deconstruct what they've done, what they've been thinking about. It's really important that we have their attention in that moment, and that was primarily why we went with it, and it's starting to show, I think.
So to your mind, like, what are some of the killer features of an online coaching platform, or what were some of the criteria that you were evaluating one from the other on? Or
yeah, well, I mean, look, as I say, I acknowledge that, first of all, that there's a number of different ways to do it, right? So I don't want to sort of sell one particular app over the other.
Yeah, I mean, we're not. We're not here to sell. Sorry, I forgot the name of the platform, but as someone, you've clearly done a lot of research in this area.
Sure.
What were you looking at?
Yeah, for sure. So some of the things that it should have, I guess, is from a coach's point of view, is the ability to upload a lot of different kinds of media, right? It might be a post that you're just tapping into the keyboard, but it might also be a video that you've taken, or it might be a photo of your training log, your training journal or something like that. So, as you know, those features are stock standard on a messenger or a WhatsApp or something along those lines, right? But again, this was an opportunity to bring our athletes together and put them into leadership groups as well. And so different, at least my understanding, my handle on things like Line or WhatsApp or Hangouts, we were able to put people into their groups, their collective leadership groups. And as coaches, we can keep an eye over everything. We can interact with the groups. The individuals can interact with each other and with the group. And so there's lots of layers to it, you learn. So you can really sort of unpack quite a lot and structure the group in a way that suits what you're trying to achieve, based on your values or your the culture you're trying to create in the team. So for us, there was lots of different opportunities or options out there. And I think that no matter which one you choose, there's always going to be, I wish it could, if only it could do this, that would be really, really helpful. And I've got to be mindful that, as a coach, this is my preference in how to communicate with people, but it doesn't always gel with the rest of the group. So there's a little bit of, I guess, working out the kinks from the athlete's point of view as well. And I've had a couple, like the point that you make, I've had a couple say, can we just use a Facebook page, please? And it's a matter of sort of working those kinks out. Okay, how can we make this structure, given the platform we've got, how can we make it work for you a little bit better? So there's always that transaction as you sort of work out the kinks.
I imagine you must have gotten a bit of resistance because especially I think with Kendo also, some of the competitors tend to be, I don't know about the New Zealand team, but sometimes you have some older folks who are maybe a little bit less open to social media, or I don't know, my experience, a lot of people attracted to Japanese martial arts tend not to be on the bleeding edge of technology, just in terms of their personality. So, did you get a lot of pushback from the athletes, people who were just flat out really not willing to engage, or?
It's an interesting question because what we're we're relatively early days in terms of the selection of the team, or what we're calling the arrangement or positioning of team members within the wider squad. I could probably share this because I won't mention any names. Some feedback that I got recently was that I don't like to blog about my kendo. I don't like to, finish a training and then write a post about it, right? And I totally get that, mate, because I'm prone not to update my Facebook page at all, or even my LinkedIn profile very much. Right?
I swung the thing a lot. I got kind of tired. Like,
Yeah, yeah, exactly, right. So, you know, within certain sort of clear guidelines and frameworks, we ask for the athletes to break down what their thoughts are, you know, what their strengths are, what their work-ons are currently, those sorts of things, so that we can be connected with our athletes as coaches and as selectors, know what they're thinking, what they're working on, how they see themselves, where they see themselves in the team. But going back to your question, you know, there is a little bit of I guess pushback, in as much as people aren't comfortable sharing that level of intimacy about their training, right? And while I get that, because again, like I said, personally, I tend not to shout from the rooftops, you know, what my latest day was like, unlike my older brother tends to do, even though you probably argue that point. The point is, from a coaching perspective, is like, we want to know what you guys are up to, where's your head at, particularly now when you're not actually able to get on the floor. Like I said before, New Zealand is in a pretty strict lockdown. We're coming out of it this week, but it's meant that there's been zero social interaction outside of your bubble. So no training. So what we've done is we've put out these, what we call hashtag challenges, right? And a hashtag challenge, for example, is based on a theme for that week, right? So it might be something like hashtag Sempo, right? The first position in the team. And what I've asked the athletes to do is venture out into the World Wide Web, right? See what you can find on YouTube from a team event, and notice what the Sempo does differently to the Jiho, right? Or another example might be, once the Sempo scored a point, how did their behavior change, right? Did they continue to look for another one, or did they hold back? So there's clarity on what you're looking for in the hashtag Sempo challenge, bringing that back to the app and deconstructing it and starting to think about, okay, this is what I've read in the strategy of these teams, and this is what I think his or her strength was, and, you know, how I fit in. And there's a lot of sort of things that you can start to unpack there. But the point is, in absence of being able to physically train, we're looking at kendo from, you know, examples online, and deconstructing that, unpacking that as part of your own development. Why is that important? Well, like I said, you can't physically do it yourself at the moment. But when we start to read what's going on in a YouTube clip or something like that, we're starting to understand or recognize patterns in behavior. And how important is that when we stand at the edge of a shiaijo waiting for us, you know, our own turn to go, right? If we can read the way in which people alter their strategy, step things up or hold back, those sorts of things, we can start to realize, you know, what's my strategy going to be as I go out onto the floor, rather than just going, oh, okay, he just got a kote on me. Do I take it back, or what do I do? And then all the cards fall down, right? So we're starting to try and build that level of awareness, I guess, strategic awareness, right at this moment, like as best we can, given the limitations that we have.
That's interesting. I remember my first sensei, actually, we used to always go over to her house afterwards, and you know, even for us, you know, mudansha, we'd go in and watch clips of ourselves at practice or other CI, and she'd just always be pushing us to break down what's happening, why did that person score a point, or what's wrong with this person's kata, this, that, and the other, and really push that. And it wasn't until I got, you know, to other doors that I realized how unusual that was, but still.
Yeah, absolutely. That's
so useful.
Yeah, it's such a key part of what we do. Like when you introduced me, Yulin, you mentioned pedagogy, and that being the art and science of teaching and learning, basically how we teach, how we learn, and improve that process. And my research has been around coach pedagogy, you know, how we coach, how we learn in the sporting context, right? And it's so off. You're absolutely right. It's so common practice for us to sort of finish up training, chuck our gear in the boot of the car, and leave it there until the next. And the thing is that for a lot of us, thinking about Kendo doesn't happen to a very deep degree until the next time we go to the dojo, and that's fine because it's Kendo fulfills a certain purpose for an individual purpose for all of us. So some of us aren't really worried too much about the strategy of a senpo in a team fight at the All Japan high school level, for example. It just doesn't. It's not an important thing. But when we can start to encourage other ways in various ways, deeper ways of engaging or thinking about our Kendo, then the benefits are numerous, right? And filling that spot in between training on Wednesday and training on Saturday is potentially really, really valuable, despite what your motivation might be, right?
Well, even I think more than that, for me, a lot of it was just my since I always used to talk about mitori geiko, right, as one of the most important things you could do, and that practice to look at what someone else is doing, to break it down, and also to be able to put it into words and be specific about what you're seeing is a skill that has to be trained, and it just it seems like a lot of people don't seem to start developing that skill until they reach fourth or fifth dan, or aren't asked to develop that skill until fourth or fifth dan, when they're starting to have to step up and lead the class, and sometimes I think people find themselves ill prepared for that.
Yeah, I think you're right, mate. And it's not even limited to grade either. I think at least from my observations, if we can start to give younger kenshi in the club a chance to articulate what they're thinking or what their observations are through mitori geiko, or before, during, or after a keiko, a jigeko or something like that, I think we'd probably be blown away, given the chance. And it takes a little bit of time, like you've said, we don't often get that opportunity up until a certain level of responsibility in the dojo. So to break that ice takes a little bit of time potentially, but once you do, the insights that whether it be a Q grade or a young person have, it's really exciting to see sometimes, because they absorb so much more than what we give them in training.
It'd be a little embarrassing for the senpai in the dojo, though, to be like, oh crap, that guy's noticed the bad habit. My sense I've been trying to correct for like 3 years now.
Hey man, any feedback's good feedback, eh?
So I get back to the hashtag challenges. Have there been any that have been a bit of a flop or disastrous?
It's not really, to be honest, not really at this stage. I think, I guess the wheels start to wobble a little bit, given the current climate. What I mean by that is that people have got so many other things going on, so many other things that they're having to consider, whether it be their job, right, job security, or whether it be family concerns, or whatever the case may be. So kendo sometimes, even at this high performance level in the national team, it needs to take a back seat. And so, I can provide a great deal of suggestions for the hashtag challenges and things like that. But at the end of the day, whether they have the capacity to sort of delve into the massive backlog of videos on YouTube or not is sort of up to them. So it's not so much that the hashtag challenges themselves, don't get don't prompt sort of thought and things like that. It's whether the person has capacity to put towards thinking about kendo in that given moment. And I think that, I don't have a point of reference at this stage, because the pandemic has really sort of shaken everybody. So you have to have a certain amount of I guess leeway for everybody working through those things. So I can let you know a little bit later in the campaign if some of them have just gone completely off track. But I will say one thing. In a Zoom meeting we had with the team the other day, a suggestion was made from one of the lads that, hey, can we suggest the hashtag challenges? Can we lead those rather than coach saying, okay, guys, hashtag hikiwaza, tell me what's relevant to you, and they pick that up and run with it. So they're thinking.
Hell yeah! I mean, it's unusual to get that level
absolutely.
of.
Absolutely. So it's really encouraging, right? And as a for instance, it hasn't started yet. We're kicking off with that from next week. But as an example, they want to know more about mental skills training. What can we do beyond the physical, the technical, the tactical? What can we do to get ourselves sharp and ready for competition? And this isn't anything new in the sports sector and in the wider sports world. And it's not necessarily unusual in Kendo either. We've got different ways of working through focus and attention and all those sorts of psychological skills. But being athlete-led, it means that they can start to go, right, I really struggle with nerves before a fight. So how can I access advice for that sort of stuff, right? So it's exciting. Like you say, it's really, really cool that they're leading that process themselves.
I've heard for that, like ritual or creating some sort of ritual or thing before a match is often, I guess, recommended, whether it be listening to specific music or basketball is a lot on my mind lately because I've been watching that Michael Jordan documentary.
Oh yeah.
Last Dance, but
The Last Dance, yeah.
Dribble twice, stick your tongue out, and create that sort of muscle memory to get yourself in the right mood.
For sure.
That's what absolutely. Is that
absolutely right, man.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so the routines that athletes engage in before a competition or before anything that's sort of a little bit high pressure or whatever the case may be, they're absolutely key in my perspective, from my perspective as coach, because what it does is it allows you to take control to the best of your ability of the situation, what's going on within your space. You can't control the way the referee reacts, for example. You can't necessarily control to any great degree what the opponent will do, in a kendo context. But you can control the way that you're going to approach it, the way you're going to frame it, and where you're going to put your attention in that moment, right? So going through those rituals or those routines is just such a massive part of what we can do to put ourselves in the best position to get the best result. Notice I didn't say win, but to put ourselves in the best position to get the best result, right? Because it might be, you learn that depending on your position in the team, for example, to go out for a win is putting yourself in a lot of danger, to be picked off for a debanakote or, some sort of kaishiwaza or whatever. It could be that getting hikiwake in that moment, in that fight, is the right thing to do. But unless we're very, very clear in control of what we're doing, we might miss that cue, right? So those routines are absolutely key for sure.
I mean, it sounds a bit like at least during the this coronavirus period, I guess this online platform has stressed a lot the mental or strategic aspects. Do you expect that focus to shift and the way the online platform gets utilized to shift once people can start training in person again?
I think it's a really good question, mate, because I'm doing a little bit of research with a few other sports teams at the moment. In New Zealand, rugby is really big, right? So they're working through how their athletes at the Crusaders are dealing with the online approach, and it works to a certain point. It fulfills a certain need, but at the end of the day, we're talking about sports people, and they want to be and they need to be out there physically moving their body, whatever the sport requires. And so I think what we're doing at the moment is fulfilling a need, but when the opportunity comes and we can go and train again, we'll absolutely prefer that to solely being online. The key for us, I guess, as coaches or as educators, again, drawing on my my work at the university, is to figure out how to make that transition not only smooth, but to leverage off what we've achieved in the online space as well. So it becomes not so much a thought from, oh, you remember 2020 when that whole mess happened and we had to move online, but to how do we maintain some of the good things that we were able to achieve and combine those, right? So whether that be what they call flip learning or blended, whatever the case may be, I think as a coach, and an educator more broadly, what we can think about is that this is a diverse approach to educating or to coaching. And some athletes really like the online approach. Some athletes really, really prefer the physical, right? The face-to-face in the flesh. But it's so important, no matter what the context, whether it be sport or in the classroom, that we acknowledge that people have different learning preferences as well as teaching preferences, right? So if we can, I guess, think about it as putting another feather in our cap, another bow, in the thing. So we've got more and more scope to how we deliver our content and how we engage with athletes, then we're only going to be moving from strength to strength, I think. If we forget about it completely, it would be a shame. It would be a waste, because we're learning new skills as coaches and as athletes to get information from different sources. It just makes sense that we hold on to it as best as we can, right?
I guess, even if people start getting back into the dojo, the team is still spread out so widely geographically. You guys aren't ever going to be able to get into one space to train together.
Not often, that's right. And again, like we said at the start, this was a pre-pandemic decision. So yeah, exactly. We're dotted all over the globe. So how do we connect and maintain or develop the culture? Because as you say, the next time that we're going to see each other, hopefully, is going to be in Paris 2021. And that's all together, right? So, maintaining a certain culture and set of expectations is really, really key. So if we can do that via an app, whether we do it on Facebook or WhatsApp or Coach Now, doesn't really matter as long as it's happening. You know what I mean?
So, this sort of also leads you to a question I've been thinking about for a long time, which is like, how much can you coach or teach traditional Japanese martial arts online? Like, how much is even possible?
Counter question: why wouldn't it be? I mean, I know exactly.
Well, because when I talk to Japanese sensei about it, right, it's almost as if they've all been reading from the same prepared speech, right? It's the essence of this can only be taught in person through crossing swords, watching from videos or other things, or from books. You're going to learn the wrong way and absolutely develop bad habits that you will never be able to fully erase. It's just the flat is, it's just not possible.
There's so much to unpack there, mate. I love it. It's awesome. How much time do we have? Well, okay, first thing, I really firmly believe that we don't coach kendo. We don't instruct kendo. I know that people don't like that word coach when we talk about Budo, right? But just semantics aside, we don't instruct kendo. We teach people, right? So it's a really important thing to remember that in that exchange, right, it doesn't really matter what the sport or the Budo or the activity is. We're dealing with people, and people have different understandings and interpretations of that content, right? So that leads me into the next part of what you said, what you suggested, that there's a wrong way to do something. And that sort of really kind of irks me a little bit as a someone who's done kendo for, oh God, I don't know, 25 odd years since I was a little fella to now. and there's this idea. So like I've been brought up with exactly what you've said. You know, there's an ideal way to do kendo. Let's move away from correct, for example. Let's just say there's an ideal way to do kendo.
There's some things only you can learn through the kensen, right? Somehow,
yeah, like
doing this with another person's shinai is osmosis or some sort of electric.
Yeah, like I mean, yeah, for sure. I mean, there's no way that I would suggest that, you know, the depth of learning that you can get online will surpass what you can do, you know, face to face. Like this is the essence of what we do, for sure, right? But there's all sorts of ways that we can get understand or deepen our understanding. Like I was talking about before, there's diversity in the way people prefer to learn and to absorb that information. For us to sort of think, well, there's an ideal way to do kendo, there's an ideal way to execute a waza or to strike men or whatever the case may be, I think is a little bit outdated. And I think that if you really thought about it, and this is what I'm chewing over at the moment as the national coach for New Zealand, how do we get better at Kiwi kendo, at New Zealand style of kendo, right? Not the Japanese way, not the Korean way, not the American way. Those countries develop their own understanding, their own culture, and their own set of values and expectations in their own context, right? We need to do that in the developing nations, I believe, really, really, in order for us to progress on the world stage. If we keep trying to do Japanese correct kendo, we're only going to get good at Japanese kendo. And who's the best at doing Japanese kendo, Yulan? The Japanese, right? So for us to do well on the global stage, we need to figure out what kendo is and means to us as New Zealanders, right? And it applies to every other kendo nation out there. Like, how do we develop kendo that's relevant to the people in our teams or in our clubs or in our dojo or in our federation? And so shifting away from that idea that there's one ideal way to do it is really important, I think. So embracing technology to teach kendo right now is a needs must sort of a thing. Moving forward, or just more broadly, again, keep coming back to that idea that we've got different ways of absorbing information. There's another key piece to this, mate, and that is that young people have different expectations. They have different understandings and appreciations for, you know, different mediums. We make the assumption that all young people know how to use technology, which is not necessarily true. Definitely. I consider myself young, and I'm not. But the idea is that we have to sort of be open to providing that information, whether it be content or concept, right? Philosophy or history or whatever it is, in different mediums, so that we can capture the minds of more people. Otherwise, we're just going to be sort of reinventing the wheel each time. And in order for the art to evolve, I think it's really important that we embrace different ways of delivering that information, right? And getting different voices as a part of it. Like we talked about before, the athletes going, hey, can we do it this way, please? You know, it's like, go for it. You know what I mean? Like, I've got absolutely no ego wrapped up in this. If that's where you want to take it, by all means. And if you think that it's rubbish, let me know. And that's a really hard thing, I think, to do in the context of kendo, because of the hierarchy, the joge kanke that we adopt from an Eastern approach. I'm not saying it's bad, but I'm saying that if we can be flexible about that outside of Japan, I think we can only benefit from it. You know what I mean?
Well, it certainly sounds like a topic that I'd love to dive a little bit deeper into, but maybe for another time.
Yeah, by all means, mate. I don't mind ruffling feathers, Yulan. It's all good, mate. It's good.
Well, as you may have seen from some of my posts of The Skeptic, I also do enjoy pissing some people off sometimes.
Listen, it's about challenging our assumptions. And I know that that sounds a little bit,
Very Western.
yeah, conehead academic Western literature. But it's really, really important because, you know, part of the conversation is how do we grow Kendo? How do we get more people doing this? How do we celebrate this art across more and more cultural boundaries, age, gender, everything? We want to grow the art. I don't think anybody doing Kendo, anyone watching or listening to this is going to argue that point.
I mean, you and I have talked about this before, right? Sort of or sort of brainstormed a little bit about it, like what makes for a successful dojo. Right? There's almost no material out there that I've seen on, well, how do you run and build a successful club? Like how do you, what can you do to attract people? What makes people stay? That kind of thing, right? What are the characteristics of successful dojos and not successful dojos, and not just in terms of, oh, this dojo has produced a lot of really strong people.
Yeah, I think, again, coming back to that comment I made before about we don't coach sport, we coach people. I think there's a lot in there in terms of what service we provide, what culture we champion in our dojo, you know, what expectations we have as instructors, as senpai, and even as learners, you know, of our senpai and our instructors, you know, and that sort of that culture, those values is a really important thing to consider. I had a question the other day asked of me when I was talking to Hiroi Mafuji in a similar exchange. You know, is it okay? The question was, I'm paraphrasing, is it okay to have a little bit of fun with adult beginners, or should they go straight into the regi? You know, this is how you put your keiakugi on, this is how you do seiza, this is how you bow in and out, and those sorts of things. And my response was essentially what I've been talking about. It depends on what you want to champion in your club. You know, what are the values that you want to install? How do you want people to think about your club, right? And their experience with your club. So, you know, I don't believe there's a right or wrong answer there. If people want to come in and they expect a certain regimented approach to Kendo, and that's what they were looking for when they came, you know, potentially you're looking at some successful intake of beginners. At the same time, I think it's really important to remember that old and young people engage in physical activity because they enjoy it. They enjoy the camaraderie. They enjoy the social aspect. You know, not all of us want to be world champion. Not all of us are even remotely motivated by competition. So what is it that they're there for? Potentially, really, you know, the research would tell us in all number of different, particularly Western countries, that people are there for the camaraderie, for the social connection. You know, so how do you facilitate that social connection? Would probably be a pretty big piece of the conversation, I think, in terms of your question, how do you run a successful club? You know what I mean? Particularly outside of Japan, right?
Well, maybe we can pick that up next time. Just in the interest of time, I think we can maybe wrap it here. But I just wanted to thank you for your time. And
My pleasure, man.
Chance to talk again soon.
Good as gold. Thanks, Yulan. Cheers, man.
All right, cheers.